Hello, Nate.
Hello, Greg, and hello, everybody who's out there. It is time once again for our bi weekly What's This Bird live program, broadcast, live stream. We actually had a discussion about that
We
internally
did
the other day about what exactly
the
this is.
the
I think
old
it's
the
probably safe.
olds the olds will call it a broadcast.
Yeah, I think a live stream is probably the more accurate description these days. But we're excited to talk about birds and birding with everybody here. What we typically do in this space.
Yep.
Well, you might back up a little bit. The American Birding Association maintains a number of Facebook groups, one of which is What's This Bird? And the idea is that, you've got a photo of a bird, you take it with your camera or with your phone. Increasingly, so many people take photos with their phones. And then you put it in our group, and the community, the friendly community of birders, moderators, etc., will identify that bird for you, usually pretty quickly. But it's also an opportunity for us to take some of those photos that are particularly interesting or particularly useful for the time of year, and we will talk about those and talk through those identifications, and basically just take the opportunity to chat about birds. Greg,
Yes.
how you doing?
I'm good. I am good. We were talking just before we got on the air here about the weather. It's March, and
Lousy smarch weather.
I'm sure just like it is for you here in the Great Lakes, it's like weather by Sybil. It's just
Yeah,
like it's 70, it's 30, it's sleeting, we're having a
no one
drought.
knows.
It's like nobody knows what the hell's going on. And
Yeah,
of course
absolutely.
the first warm days in March is when all the maples start blooming, and then you can't see and you can't breathe, and I sound like a
Yeah.
crotchety old.
I
Anyways,
know, I
but
know it's the way it is. My family has been dealing with various pollen-related sniffles for the last few weeks. We're less concerned that it is COVID than we have been in years past, as the numbers continue to decline, thankfully. But it's still not a pleasant sort of situation. But
but the birds,
it's the birds are moving, the birds are
the
singing.
birds
We
are
got a lot of
moving.
birds around. Yeah,
We
it's
had
time. It's time for migration. Yeah, or
it
the very
is. We
very
had
beginning of it.
I am very fortunate to live directly under the main flyway for Sandhill cranes coming from their
Oh,
wintering
that's nice.
grounds in Indiana down to Tennessee. They come up basically right over the western suburbs of Chicago and then continue north. Some of them going all the way to the Arctic. Um, and this last weekend was the biggest movement of cranes I've seen in one day in
Oh
20
wow.
years of living here. It was amazing. Anytime I stepped outside, there were hundreds, if not thousands, of cranes overhead. It was just an amazing
Yeah,
day.
there is nothing quite like the spectacle of thousands upon thousands of massive birds
Yep.
passing overhead. How many people in Chicagoland, Greg, do you think notice that?
Well, something here's interesting. It's I live in Berwyn, which is a suburb of Chicago, right on the
Mm-hmm.
border of Chicago. And most people don't even realize it's a suburb; they think it's part of the city. But um, we have, like most Facebook, we have a community group for our
Mm-hmm.
suburb, our,
Mm-hmm.
our neighborhoods, and a lot of people were like with their phones going, "What are these geese? What are these things flying over?" And
Yeah,
I answered a lot of questions about sandhill cranes
yeah,
because on a bright day like that, and they were a little bit lower than we're used to
yeah,
seeing them this weekend, you can't miss them. I mean,
yeah.
there's if you miss them, you're deaf or just whatever. But if you're outside, you cannot miss these birds.
Yeah, that's really cool. I love it when one of the things that I really like about birding is this sense that you are sort of aware of the rhythms of the world around you in a way that regular people are not. There's always you're never not far away from some amazing bird that's migrating, even if it's like something really common that is like its life history is so unbelievable if you sit down and actually think about it. And
Mm-hmm.
when and most people miss that, and But when you've got something like that, some sort of big, massive movement of thousands of cranes over a highly populated area, it's always neat when people do get a glimpse of that world that's kind of going on outside them.
Yeah, and what's
I
even
really
cooler,
like
in the Chicago metro area, on a day like we had last Sunday when they're moving like that, they tend to kettle, which is when they soar in these big circles. That's called kettling. What they're doing is they're catching an updraft, and they're using the thermals, the updraft from a thermal to gain altitude and move on. It helps. Yeah, it conserves energy. But the places in the metro areas that have the best thermals are the parking lots of the big malls.
I was going to say, because of the heat islands. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so you get these tremendous numbers of birds circling right over these giant parking lots, and it's like you can't miss it.
That's pretty wild.
Matt Ogleski says hi. Hi, Matt.
Hey, Matt. Hey, Ronan. Hey, Timothy Condon over there on YouTube. We appreciate y'all joining us today. It's always nice to chat with people about birds. In addition to the birds we're going to be showing here and the identifications we're going to be talking through, if anyone out there has any questions, comments, conversation starters about birds and birding, sort of more generally or even more specific to the stuff that we're talking about, please let us know in the comments. One of the great things about this live format is that we can interact with all y'all, and so we can we're happy to take a pause in our regularly scheduled program and go off on a tangent if that opportunity.
And it is let me see here if I just it is 5:00 in the evening in London, which means that Steve Huggins is having dinner, and we probably won't see him here today, which is something maybe to be thankful for. Anyway,
is he overseas? What's he overseas for?
He is. He's visiting family.
Oh, right. We do have some regular visitors from overseas that come.
Yeah, we do. Shout out to David Lindo, the urban birder who pops in on a regular basis to see what
we
got to
have him on, Greg.
I think that's going to happen. That's just it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. But
I do have a question already, Greg.
Oh, what's the
before we
question?
get going? It's Bob Kachurik on YouTube. He asks, not related to a particular bird, but a question that's been on his mind. How far away from his backyard are the nests of his typical backyard birds? He lives in near Cleveland, Ohio, just for context. Hey, Bob, how you doing?
Boy,
I'd say a lot of times they're right there.
Or they're on the house.
Depends on the bird. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
I have house finches that are literally on my house right now.
I've had
just finished their nests. Yeah.
House finches, house sparrows, and American robins have all nested on my house.
I had a Carolina wren nest in the slightly open cable box that was stuck on the back of my house. So they do find a spot underneath the deck sometimes too. That they
and something that I found interesting about the American robins in my neighborhood. I wish I had the time and energy to do sort of a general study of American robins in urban neighborhoods, because they're just so well adapted to living with us. And I've noticed that they frequently will choose a place to nest that is very, very close to either a front door or a back door, or a table in your yard or whatever. And I've also noticed that our neighbor used to have a dog that would keep the neighborhood cats away, and the robins would always nest in that yard.
I was just going to ask. I was going to say the regular coming and going of the people that live in the house are probably a good thing for robins, because they're inclined to sit tight, and they know that foxes, crows, cats are probably not going to come and bother their nest if it is right there next to your front door that you're using somewhat regularly. Yep. Cinnamon Stewart asks on Facebook, she's going to go look for a pink-footed goose in Vermont. It's only an hour out of our way. Does that make me a chaser?
Yes, it does.
I'd say it does. Yeah. Welcome to the club, Cinnamon. even if it's just an hour. In fact, I don't usually chase much more than an hour anymore. I'm kind of a lazy twitcher, but if a bird is nearby, I'll go get it.
Absolutely. So hey, you want to dive into our first picture?
Yeah, let's
here?
do it. I think we've vamped enough, Greg.
Yeah.
Let's talk some birds that we have prepared.
So this comes from Hayward, California, and I think that we don't need to go all Ted Floyd here and start with how do we know it's a bird. I think
it has feathers.
It has feathers.
It appears to.
Yeah, I think that pretty much everybody can figure out that this is a heron or egret. It's these are iconic birds that are very popular in art.
Yeah.
So
long legs, long neck, long bill.
Long bill, and in this case, white. There aren't
not
many.
Too many all white birds in North America that are not egrets.
Yeah, so if you look in your field guide at those birds, you'll notice that the white species of herons are called egrets, with the exception of a couple of juvenile plumages of a couple of herons that are white. But what are we seeing on this bird here?
Well, the things that stand out to me are the sort of feathery tips to the feathers that are coming off the wing, kind of hair-like and very thin. The all-black bill, I think, is definitely noteworthy. Lots of herons and egrets have yellow bill, including great egret, which would rule that out. And proportionally, it doesn't look like a great egret to me, which is much more like a great blue heron, very, very long-necked, kind of serpentine neck, but with a yellow bill for the most part, and this one does not have that. It's all black. I think that's accurate. Looks like it's got some dark mud-covered legs, generally dark, but I think there's some field marks that we're not seeing on that thing.
That's right.
But a medium-sized white bird is probably going to be one of two. It's going to be either a snowy egret. Well, one of three. One is extremely unlikely. Snowy egret, juvenile little blue heron, as you alluded to, Greg, which the young birds have are all white plumage before they turn into kind of the slate gray, kind of maroony purple adults, and little egret, which somewhat, I mean, is a possibility on the East Coast. I would not expect it on the West Coast.
Yeah. So let's get rid of the little egret first. Little egret would have two long plumes coming off the back of the head.
Yes.
And not this sort of raggedy little crest coming off the back of the head.
Furry looking.
Yeah, so that gets that, even if we're delving into the first state record possibilities here, we can just eliminate that right away. Like you said, the longer great egret would just be kind of more statuesque, taller, longer, have a longer bill with yellow on the bill.
Yeah, this bird's definitely moving around on that mud flat. You can tell that it's running, and that is not typically a great egret behavior. They are a stand and wait predator, whereas little blue heron and snowy egret are chase things around on a mud flat predators.
So a couple things that are, and the reason that we picked this picture is that there's a couple of things that are a little bit unusual. One is that bright kind of orange in the face, which is the bare skin in front of the eye, the lores. And if you go through the field guides, especially Sibley points out, different color of the lores. But at this time of year in spring, when these birds are breeding, that can be really confusing because that color is determined by hormones and just how hopped up that bird is. And I was gonna say, this is peak breeding period for these birds. I mean, they are looking their best right now, and it's like orange yellow. It's really bright. And that facial skin can even like tend into pink, and be
And great
really
egrets,
confusing.
it's like this really cool tealy green color. It's really, really pretty.
But the other thing is its feet, and the feet are covered in thick, almost like benthic clay mud, that are really doing a good job of obscuring this bird's golden slippers. And if it wasn't, if the feet were clean, we'd see those bright yellow feet and instantly know that this is a snowy egret.
Yep, for sure. Snowy egret, pretty. As we suggested, all of the egrets and herons are looking their very best this time of year. So you're going to get a really good look at them if you see them. But yeah, the kind of the furry feathers, breeding plumes that are at their nicest this time of year, they kind of get worn away as the spring wears on. It's almost, I mean, that's got to be super thick mud, because snowy egret feet are almost as bright as that lure that we talked about this time of year. So the fact that is completely obscured is pretty wild. That's some serious mud.
Yeah, that's the kind where you leave your boots behind.
That's right. Yeah, it's not coming off.
So this comes from my home state of Illinois. And right now, these birds are moving, and people are posting a lot of pictures of them all over the place. And there are two species that are superficially quite similar. So we see this bird that's kind of brown and dumpy. This one's standing out in a marsh. We can see the grass there, so we get an idea of how big it is. But look at that bill. This
is a shorebird. I'll go back a little bit. Kind of dumpy body, smallish head, very long bill, all over sort of muted, streaky brown. Definitely a sandpiper, Charadriformes. There's only a few sandpipers that have a bill that long, though. I
can only think of three, really.
I was going to say four.
Four, sorry. Yeah. I was lumping two of them. Two of them.
In the past, they were lumped, interestingly enough. So that would be the dowitchers, both dowitchers, long and short-billed. American woodcock, which is extremely on the extreme end of dumpy, with a very long bill. And in North America, it's Wilson's snipe. There are a lot of snipe around the world, of which a few have shown up in North America. I don't know in Illinois, usually in Alaska or in Atlantic Canada. I think there are records of the European common snipe, and a couple others that are not worth mentioning here. But Wilson snipe is the one that you would expect. So Wilson snipe, the dowitchers, and American woodcock. We can pretty quickly narrow this bird down to those four.
Yeah. Now, this time of year, birds can wind up anywhere. If you've been following Central Park birders or the New York City birders, you will see that there's been a couple of woodcocks in a couple of very, very tiny little parks in Manhattan,
so wild.
that are giving everybody great looks. And, so you can find birds anywhere, but this bird is out in the open in a marsh, which is typical of this species when you see it.
Yes.
But backing up, I think we can eliminate the dowitchers right away because of just how heavily patterned this bird is.
Yep.
This bird has a bold supercilium. It's got stripes on the back. It's got heavy barring on the flanks, and a brown chest. So I think the dowitchers would still be in winter plumage or just starting to transition, and would look nothing like this. So we can eliminate those. But now woodcock and snipe, if you can't go by habitat, even though habitat's a great clue here, but the woodcock has barring across the top of the head. It doesn't have stripes going longitudinally down the head. It's also got a very different pattern on the back, but the face.
I was just gonna say those braces on the back that you can see very well on this bird. Those pale stripes that are kind of going front to back, down the back. Woodcock would not have that. Woodcock would just kind of generally be kind of an orangey buff color all over the front as well, not as heavily streaked as you said, Greg. But habitat is such a big clue for me. a woodcock is a nocturnal bird primarily. So during the day, they're going to kind of be hiding in dense forest thickets and things of that nature. You might flush one accidentally, but for the most part, they kind of sit still. They come out at night and start poking around in wet fields for earthworms and whatnot. But if you see a bird like this standing in the middle of the day out in a marsh or a mudflat like that, there's a good, or even like a wet field, a meadow,
Yep.
or a fallow farm field. I've seen them in places like that. It's most likely going to be a Wilson's snipe, which is the North American Gallinago, the snipe that's commonly found across North America. That's what this is. Wilson's snipe, named after
Yes.
Alexander Wilson.
And
Father
both
of American
and both
ornithology.
the snipe and woodcock, are displaying now, and the snipe will start up in a few weeks here. In some places they may be displaying, but what's neat about both of these birds is that they have crepuscular flight displays. So
Really super cool flight displays, both of them.
yeah, and if you can get out in the early evening or the early morning and catch the snipe, is the display is called winnowing, and what it does is it flies up in the air, and it's got uniquely shaped tail feathers that make this vibrating kind of, I don't know how to describe it. Yeah,
it's like like a kazoo. When you blow a kazoo and the little piece of wax paper and the thing makes the bzzz sound. That's essentially what's happening with snipe and woodcock for that matter.
Exactly, and in the case of the woodcock, those feathers are the outer primary feathers are very thin and reed-like, and it makes a very high-pitched sort of twittering noise up in the sky.
Yeah, when it flaps. Yeah.
But
It's really cool. I was going to say Heidi McCullough in Facebook notes. Woodcock has a comb over, and it does. That's kind of a neat way to describe that kind of flat.
With the
patch.
With the
like a
barring
bad
going.
toupee. Yeah,
exactly.
on a woodcock.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Pressing on here, we have a picture of ducks.
Yeah, I think we're pretty safe to call these ducks. All of the other small birds that would be sitting on the water would not show nearly as much white on them. Certainly not as that bird in the front would be. So yeah, we're looking at ducks here and not coots or grebes.
Exactly. And I'm not sure if the thing on the left is a duck or not. I don't know where this picture was taken.
Greg,
I think I see two. I think I see two and a stick.
Yeah, I could see that. Or
if it's a bird diving.
Exactly. I wonder if they didn't take the photo right as the bird was sort of rearing forward to dive. These are small diving ducks.
But this is another birding by impression example here. Well, yeah, it has to be. But as you said, if you go through the field guides of birds that would be floating on the water, there's very few in North America that have that amount of white. And only one that has that big white patch on the head. And that is a male bufflehead. The thing that you could confuse that with might be a male hooded merganser, but that species has a really, the whole flank is chestnut, and it just has a white chest. Gives a very different impression.
Yeah, bufflehead is going to be one of our most common small pond diving ducks. This is exactly the sort of place that I expect to see them. Farm ponds, retention ponds, all sorts of stuff. Oh, my daughter's coming in. Anyway, kids are home from school today. So where was I? So the three ducks that I typically see on farm ponds like this, on what look to be kind of small ponds, would be bufflehead, ringneck duck, and hooded merganser, as you say. And it's not hooded merganser because of the bright white sides, and it's not ringneck duck because they'd have a little more gray on the flank, and typically you'd be able to see, and I think you absolutely would be able to see like the spur kind of on the shoulder on a ringneck duck. Also would not have a big white patch on the head. And then, by process of elimination, although that's not my favorite way to identify birds, this would certainly be bufflehead. And it is. There's a male and a female. male in front of the female there. You can even see the white cheek patch on the female there, which is
Yep.
a nice field mark for that bird as well.
All right. This one comes to us from Arizona, and it's one of my favorite species in the ABA area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really nice.
And I think we can tell, how big this bird is by the branches and sticks around it. It's kind of brown and streaky, and it's got kind of a conical bill. So I think we can pretty quickly get into sparrows or sparrow-like birds.
Yeah, North American sparrows. Yep.
And Arizona is the land of sparrows. So much so that so much so that we actually, the ABA does a sparrow workshop every winter in Arizona. So what are we seeing here, Nate? I'm seeing a lot of brown and gray.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of brown and gray. Some things that stand out to me. The kind of broken eye ring, the pattern on the face, the really fine streaks on the back, the relatively short, the medium length tail. It's not as short as some of the other sparrows we see, but I think we can put this one in the genus Melospiza, which is kind of medium-sized streaky sparrows, of which there are 3 species. You correct me. I think there are only 3. Sparrow genera get thrown around and changed so regularly. I'm pretty sure there's only 3 Melospiza sparrows, and that is song sparrow, Lincoln sparrow, and swamp sparrow. We can throw out swamp sparrow just because it's more kind of a gray and brown as opposed to sort of a rich chestnut. And I don't know that swamp sparrow is a very common bird in Arizona either. It's more of an eastern species. I'm going to check my app here real quick to be sure. Yeah, it looks like there's some wintering birds in southeast Arizona, but generally speaking, it's not a very common bird there. So we'll narrow it down to Lincoln's or song.
So one thing to pay attention to with these birds, this bird here, what we're seeing, is the kind of the color palette of the overall bird. It's kind of a olivey, buff, gray. It really doesn't have much in the way of cinnamon or rufous. A swamp sparrow, as you said, the tail and rump, you're going to have some noticeable rufous on that tail, and the fine streaking on the back going all the way down to the rump.
That pattern is very intricate. Yep.
It is. And you see that buffy malar, the mustache stripe on the face, and how it contrasts with that gray supercilium, that broad gray line over the eye. There's only a couple of sparrows that have that, which is that buffy malar and gray supercilium. And that's the Lincolns and the song sparrow. So I think we can kind of narrow it down to those 2.
Yeah, and the sort of the difference maker for me, and it's nice that you've shown 2 song sparrows flanking this what I'm going to say is a Lincoln sparrow.
Yes,
you can see the difference in the pattern on the back. I've always said, Lincoln sparrow looks like the streaks are drawn on with a freshly sharpened pencil, whereas song sparrow looks like they were drawn on with a crayon. So the song sparrow, you can see in both of those.
I prefer pastels, but yeah, I mean, whatever.
Pastels, whatever floats your boat.
You could say crayon, right? If it.
And also, I also this is a really good angle to see the difference in the tail length as well. The song sparrows typically have a very long tail, especially that bird on the left. Whereas Lincoln sparrows are relatively short-tailed. Melospiza more like a swamp sparrow in terms of proportions. But song sparrow has that big long tail that it drags around. It looks like it's like weighing it down whenever it flies. But yeah, nice Lincoln sparrow here. And please tell us about these two song sparrows, because they're very different.
Lincoln sparrow is found across much of the ABA area and pretty much looks the same. Whether you're seeing it out east or out west, there's not a whole lot of difference. Song sparrow is not that way at all. There is a huge clinal variation from east to west, and then again when you go, southwest to northwest. And so what we've got here on the left is a song sparrow from Pennsylvania, and on the right we have a song sparrow in Arizona. So when you're, and this bird, the Lincoln sparrow in the center, was photographed in Arizona. So when you're, comparing sparrows like this, what you're faced with in the field would be, okay, the Lincoln sparrow in the center versus an Arizona song sparrow on the right. Did I say song or Lincoln's? Lincoln's in the middle, Arizona song sparrow on the right.
On the right.
And you'll notice that the Arizona song sparrow, the eyebrow stripe is much whiter than it is in the eastern bird. The bill is thinner. It's really not that much different from a Lincoln sparrow, even though Lincoln sparrow is a little more petite. It's not chunky like the bird on the left. And look at how rufous it is. It's rufous and gray like so many of the Southwest sparrows.
Yeah, that's a really colorful song sparrow. Those southwestern song sparrows. In fact, all the song sparrows on the west are actually really, really interesting. A bit more than our classic sort of Melodia subspecies eastern song sparrow, which is the bird on the left, as you say, Greg. I'm also struck by the that malar stripe, that mustache stripe coming down off the down and away from the bill. It's white. It's pretty clearly white in both of the subspecies of song sparrow, whereas not at all in that Lincoln sparrow. So if you're seeing a lot of white in the face generally, that's a good clue for song sparrow as opposed to Lincoln sparrow, which is a bit more uniform in its color.
Exactly. I mean, Lincoln sparrow pretty much always has that buffy malar, and it's got like a little orange tinge to it. It's the
almost. Yeah.
The colors on a Lincoln sparrow, when you get to know them, it's really unique. The color palette
really
and everything's like,
yeah,
it really stands out. Exactly. And the song sparrow, again, is very variable. It can have a buffy malar, it can have a white malar, but the combination of those colors and the very noticeable eye ring and the very fine pattern really makes Lincoln sparrow stand out wherever you see it.
Yeah, we can't see the breasts in either of these birds, the front of these birds, but you would be able to see the difference when, as I said, with you don't need it, but it would be, yeah, but it would be like, that's another place where you would see the streaking, the very fine streaking of a Lincoln's versus the very coarse streaking of a song
exactly.
sparrow.
I mean, the pattern that you see on the backs of these birds is kind of mirrored on the front in terms of how it presents.
Yep.
So yes, this is a Lincoln sparrow here, flanked by two song sparrows, Arizona on the right, Pennsylvania on the left.
Yeah, pay attention to your song sparrows. They're actually really neat. Even those of us in the east, the song sparrows that we get in the winter, where I live in the southeast, are quite different from the song sparrows that we have breeding here, the Melodia ones with the big, thick, coarse, kind of rufusy gray stripes. There's a subspecies that nests up in Atlantic Canada. It's Georgiana. It nests in New Brunswick and Nova Scotia, that comes down into the southeast in the winter. And it has a lot finer streaking, and it's a lot kind of darker gray. It's really a neat looking bird if you ever see one kind of hopping around on underneath your feeder.
And then when you go to the Pacific Northwest, all bets are off.
Yeah, they're really dark.
All the sparrows, the further northwest you go, all the sparrows start getting very dark and big.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember the first time I ever saw a Northwest fox sparrow. There's a reason why people have considered them to be a possible, future split and a different species from the fox sparrows we get in the east, the red fox sparrows. It is a different beast, man. It is a different looking bird.
I think you and I went to the Pribilofs in Alaska.
That's
a couple of years apart, and the first time I saw a song sparrow up there, I was sure we had an Asian vagrant. I mean, they're just different looking from what you're used to.
Yeah, for sure. Before we get too far along, I would like to just a reminder for those people who are joining us after the beginning. If you have any questions about birds, birding, anything, please let us know in the comments. We'll be happy to take those questions, and especially once we get here towards the end, we're happy to take those at the end or break into the middle and kind of talk with you as we go. As we go live. Please let us know. We're here to talk about birds, wherever that journey takes us. There is no destination.
Well, now it's going to take us to Florida.
Belglade. Yeah, we have a couple
And
different species here.
this is a pretty the person who posted this was asking about the bird in the middle, but we can talk about all
Hmm.
three. Um, I think anybody who has spent any amount of time in the Gulf Coast or the Atlantic Coast is familiar with the other two birds that are not the rather unique looking thing in the middle. Um,
Hmm.
this is the French fry stealing, ice cream stealing, most common gull that you will
Loud,
see.
constantly yelling.
Yes, and we
The
have
soundtrack of the Atlantic and Gulf Coast beaches.
exactly. We have two laughing gulls here, an
Mhm.
adult bird in the back, and a young bird that's moving into adult
Yeah,
plumage
it's
in the
almost
front.
there.
It's getting there, but the bird in the middle, boy, is that a weird looking
What
thing.
an awkward looking bird. Like I see these birds flying every once in a while, and they are so graceful in the air. They have these beautiful long wings, and they're just like the wing load is really, I don't know whether it's high or low. The body is really small and svelte, and the wings are huge, and they're
Yes.
just really cool to watch kind of fly around. But they look so ungainly when they're sitting
And
on a pier or a beach or something like that.
yeah, and uh, if you start flipping through your field guide and looking at birds that are found on the beach, so we see, this bird has orangish legs with webbed feet,
Mhm.
and it's got a lot of pattern to it. Yeah,
Little
you're gonna
tiny
get
feet.
to
Little
little
tiny feet.
teeny tiny feet that they don't use for very much. These
Yeah.
birds are aerialists, and you're going to get to black skimmer pretty quick, which is the only skimmer we have in the ABA area. Um, and I love these birds. They're just so unique. They feed um, by gliding over the water and dipping that lower bill into the water, and I believe they go by touch, by feel
Yeah, because
when they touch.
they're primarily an internal. Well, let's not beat around the bush anymore. This is a
Yeah,
black skimmer, one of the most unique ocean going birds in North America. Actually, there are three species or four. Maybe there's four species of skimmer.
yeah.
In around the world, there's an African skimmer, an Indian skimmer, and they all they all look more or less the same with slightly differing amounts of black on the neck and head. But this is black skimmer, our skimmer of the Americas. They're found all the way down south into the Amazon. Like you can see them sitting on Amazon River islands in the middle of the
Sandbars.
Amazon River.
Yep.
Yeah, sandbars is pretty wild. But yeah, they're primarily nocturnal, so they have to go by touch.
Right.
So you see them after dark, kind of swimming over the nearshore waters, trying to pick up those little tiny fish that kind of come in at night. So the
Well,
fish
and
come
not
in
not
at night
swimming,
to the
not
shallower
swimming.
water.
They feed on the wing, and
Yeah.
they glide low over the water with those very
Mhm.
long wings, and they open their bills. See how
Yeah.
I can do this like this with that
Yeah.
long lower mandible, slicing through the water, and when they hit a fish, they snap it up.
Snap it
Um,
shut. Yeah.
One of the most unusual feeding strategies, if anything, I can
Skim.
think of.
They skim. They're called
They
black
skim.
skimmers for a reason.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And Heidi McCulloch points out something I was going to bring up is when they get on the sand during the day, they tend to, they don't sit on the sand like that laughing gull in front. They stretch out and they just look
Yeah.
so bizarre. They lay their heads down and stretch out, and they look like they're dead, but they're not. They're just taking a breast.
Yeah, the
Just-
genus is Rinchops, which literally means like bill or to cutting bill essentially is the genus. So that describes what they do. Both the scientific name and the common name describe exactly how they feed. Really cool bird. I always love to see these things. I don't see them often, as often as I like to. Where I live in North Carolina, they nest on the barrier islands. They're not terribly uncommon, but it's still always a treat to see them.
Yeah, so I'm going to break in here with a comment from Facebook. Trisha Lombardi
Yeah.
says that she photographed a yellow male cardinal in Gainesville. I'm tempted to say, well, here we go again. Um, there's one or two yellow cardinals photographed almost every year now.
Hmm.
You ask if it's 1 in a million. Who knows? It's not that common,
Maybe. I
that's for
mean,
sure.
there's a
Could be
lot
one
of
in a
cardinals
million.
out there,
There's a
so
lot
one
of
in a million could
cardinals.
be right. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't, but yeah, it's an unusual, rare,
Yeah, it's an abnormal color.
abnormal color of northern cardinal, and they always tend to generate a lot of discussion and interest when one is found. And they're cool looking birds.
Yeah, cardinals. The red color in a cardinal is determined from the sort of the carotenoids, what are called carotenoids, which are
Right.
sort of what are they? Pigments in the colors that give the red, that give it the red. It's primarily come from, I don't know, what is it? It comes from things that they eat. I think the carotenoids to some extent, or is it just always there? I don't know. Depends.
I didn't
But
have time to
it's a
research
pigment.
that before we got. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a pigment. David Sibley had a really neat thing on color abnormal coloration in birds, and he uses a cardinal as an example. So he's got a lot of illustrations of. I'll post it in the comments there. But yeah, so the red comes from carotenoids. It's a pigment that is in these birds, and if they are not able to produce carotenoids for whatever reason, all the other pigments will be there, except for the one that makes red. And because cardinals, when you think about it, are sort of like an orangey red, depending on the bird. If it doesn't have the red, then what you're going to be left with is the yellow, and
Right.
that's what shows up in these birds. And yeah, it's a pigment abnormality, and it happens from time to time. It's probably a normal mutation, but all these things are rare for a reason. These things are uncommon for a reason, and when people see them, everyone's familiar with northern cardinals. Everyone loves northern cardinals. You see one that's slightly different, it's kind of a cool thing. So
Mm-hmm. And while we're doing that, Carol Bessie asks how to find on eBird the outcome of birds that are in the rare bird alert that are unconfirmed. Example is a long-toed stint in Pinellas County, Florida on the 18th of March. Boy, I don't know exactly how to find out about unconfirmed rarities. I mean, uh, there's the alert that goes out, but some of those unconfirmed things, like they're gone by the time you get to them.
yeah, I think you can assume on those really, really, really super rare birds, like a long-toed stint in Florida, would be that a lot of it is just an honest misidentification.
Sure.
And people enter it into eBird, and something that rare is probably going to move up the queue on the reviewers' priority list pretty quickly, and they'll get to the bottom of it. It would not surprise me if it was a mistaken ID of like a Western sandpiper or a semi-palmated sandpiper or something like that. Very similar birds, same genus, difficult identification even in the best of times, and that would kind of quietly get pulled off the list. It happens. I've been an eBird reviewer for a while, and that's sort of how these things happen. Now, if it's a really rare bird, and they'll follow up and do the due diligence and all that stuff, and if it turns out that it is legitimate, it checks all the boxes and whatnot, it will be confirmed, and you'll get it will be on the map. And I'm sure a bird like that would be a lot of excitement in the Florida birding community. But my guess, just off the top of my head, is that it's probably a misidentification or a data entry error, which is also easy to do.
Right.
Carol Bessie says there are photos in eBird. Carol, would you mind putting a link to that checklist? So I would have a look at it. I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
I'm curious. I guess I could go and look myself. I'll go to ebird.com.
I can't, because I'm afraid if I open up too many windows while running this broadcast, we might blow up. So
I'll do it. Let me explore.
You could take a look there. In the meantime, I'm going to push on to the next bird here. And this is like we're kind of doing a few birding by impression here. In this segment. Chris
I like this one, Greg. It's a good one.
Chris Benish, who is an amazing birder and guide, points out that the Florida long-toed stint was a weird-looking calidrid that might well best be explained as a hybrid.
Yeah, there you go. Well, that's cool. That's almost cooler than, I mean, a long-toed stint in Florida would be really cool, but a hybrid stint is, you don't see too many of those.
Yeah, so this bird that we got the picture up here from Arkansas
there's the photo.
This happens every year, and I love it. It's one of those things that the first time you've seen it, it can kind of blow your mind. Once you become familiar with this bird, you will recognize it instantly. It is a bird that is quite frequently mistaken for the sadly extinct ivory-billed woodpecker.
Good day.
The overall, we're looking at the shape here. This bird has kind of, don't really see the legs, but looks like they're short. It's got kind of a long tail. It's got a short bill, kind of a moderate, like not too long, not too short neck. Birds that we might see like that in a tree, like herons and egrets, they have longer necks, they have longer bills, they have longer legs.
Yep. Yeah, even in a photo of this quality, you'd be able to see that.
Absolutely. So we'll just kind of jump to the chase here, and and this is a wood duck, and this time of year in particular, they are up in the trees. They nest in cavities in trees, often in pileated woodpecker nest holes or broken off branches and things like that. And you will see these ducks high up in the trees, and they can be, if you're not familiar with it, they can be very confusing.
Yeah. People didn't expect ducks in trees. But they call them wood ducks for a reason.
Yes, and but that shape, especially with the long tail, you see them flying through the trees. It's unique. And they have a very distinctive voice as they fly through the trees.
Almost always hear them more than I see them when I actually
Absolutely.
flush one.
Yeah, you walk through the swampy woods, and you hear the noise. You may never even see them, but you'll know exactly what they are and where.
Yeah, I've got some property behind my house that is owned by the city that is backs up against one of the arms of a reservoir here, and it's kind of swampy, kind of wet. Go walk back in there, and more often than not, especially this time of year, I'll flush some wood ducks off a branch, and they'll kind of fly off. Very distinctive, as you say, Greg. The long tail is unique among ducks. And also the kind of the squealing sound they make as they fly away.
Try do that again.
I'm not going to. So wood duck
didn't quite catch that.
Interestingly enough, there are some other birds that nest in trees that you can find in the same sort of places. Hooded merganser also is a cavity nester. And if you're in the right parts of the southern U.S., the whistling ducks, which are not really ducks, they're their own thing. Both of them nest in trees as well. And
whistling ducks have longer legs and much longer necks.
Yeah, exactly. They're kind of midpoint between geese and ducks. But I've hooded merganser, because they nest in trees, but I've never seen a hooded merganser perched in a tree.
You know what? And that's something interesting, is that wood ducks frequently perch in trees in the branches and move around in the trees. Hooded mergansers, I've seen hooded mergansers breeding more than a few times. I've never seen one or heard of one sitting up in the branches. They fly directly to the hole and cling to the side and duck in real fast.
Duck right in.
I've never heard of one. And golden eyes, if you're far enough north in Canada, they also nest in tree cavities. But same thing, they don't sit in the branches like a wood duck. They go straight to the hole and in or out.
Yep.
You never see those birds hanging out.
Yep.
And I've even seen wood ducks up in the trees feeding. Just kind of nibbling at weed leaves or seeds.
They're weird ducks. They don't do what you expect ducks to do all the time, and that includes sitting in trees, as the Arkansas photo suggests. I can understand why people were confused. And just as a aside, I was looking at photos of that mystery sandpiper, that mystery stint in Florida. Boy, that's good on Sandra Reed, the observer, for noticing something weird about it. That's a weird looking bird. If it's a hybrid, I would believe that, but it doesn't like immediately tick any boxes for me on what the familiar species would be. It's like a western sandpiper with long legs, really long legs. Weird. What a weird bird. Anyway, neither here nor there. But I'll defer to Chris Benish and Mike Hendrickson in the comments for that one. Common mergansers, Mike Henderson notes, also a cavity nesting duck.
So this, and I believe this might be our last one for the day, comes from San Bernardino, California, and this adds to our collection of kind of strange-looking birds up in trees. It's definitely not a cardinal or a song sparrow.
Looks pretty decent-sized bird there as compared with the branches and leaves around it. Looks like there's a willow tree back. It's in a willow tree or near a willow tree. Maybe it's not in a willow tree. There's a willow tree back there. It's got long legs, big bill,
kind of streaky all over,
flat head. Really
so there's
streaky.
So again. You start flipping through your field guide and looking for long-legged birds that are streaky brownish like this with long bills. You're going to get pretty quickly to a number of heron-like birds.
Small herons.
There's you might see limpkin among those. This is not a limpkin. Limpkin has a long curved bill, kind of a not long curved neck. But it's a strange bill and a long neck, different color and pattern. But there's three of our herons that are kind of small to mid-size that are brown and streaky, and we can see a really good field mark on this bird, even though it's kind of out of focus and kind of a little bit obscured, and the plumage doesn't look all that great. So here we've got the three streaky herons side by side, and
from left to right, there's a least bittern, which is our smallest North American heron / egret, ardeatid. The middle one is a green heron, a young green heron, and the bird on the right is American bittern, which is pretty big. Pretty big bird, good sized bird.
And if you look at the arrow there, I'm pointing out the white malar stripe, the mustache stripe on the green heron. And if we go back to this bird, we can see that even though it's kind of overexposed, you can see that white malar. So right at the base of the bill and under the eye, we see that white stripe. And there it is, pointed out a little bit more clearly. The least bittern on the left does not have really any kind of a pattern. It's got a white throat, but it doesn't really have any kind of a pattern on the face like that at all.
No pattern on the wings either. Plain wings on a least bittern, whereas these young green herons typically have very spotty wings. A lot busier on the top side.
And the overall plumage color of a least bittern can be described best as buffy or yellowish, and green heron, I don't think you'd ever call it buffy or yellowish. The American bittern on the right has a dark malar. It's got a white throat, of course, but it's got a dark malar, and it's got that black splotch on the malar, which is kind of unique. But yeah, green heron, one of the best marks for a green heron is that white malar, which the other species that it might be confused with does not have.
Yeah, for sure. And another thing, I think people sort of always, especially people who have never seen least bittern before, sort of underestimate how tiny it is. Like, it really is a very small heron. Green heron is not a big one, but
now, Susan Nelson points out night herons, the juvenile night herons, which could be confused here as well. And again, same thing. The juvenile night herons don't have the white malar the way that the green heron does. And looking here really
Young night
quickly.
herons tend to be more streaky on the back, kind of like just streaky all over, and show a lot less than sort of that kind of uniform green on the back, not on the wings of the green heron, but on the back of the green heron.
Definitely more streaky all
well.
over.
And the bill is, well, I mean, I guess the bill is quite similar with a black crowned night heron versus a green heron. Now that I sort of think about it, little thinner and longer a green heron, at least comparative, at least in proportion.
And both night herons, the bill is a bit chunkier. You know, it's just a heavier all over.
Yeah, especially yellow crowned, which is a particularly baton like bill for a heron.
Okay, well, we've got I think 5 minutes here. So if you guys have anything you want to bring up, anything you want to talk about, let her rip.
That's not the mystery calidris in Florida, because that is above.
I mean, now that I don't have to run this thing, I can take a look at that.
It's a neat looking bird.
Yeah, that is a neat looking bird.
Yeah, exactly.
I have to spend some more time with that.
I'll just let some other people identify that one. But again, like, kudos to the observer for noticing something different about it. I think that's always a nice thing, especially with sandpipers. It's a good way to find those unusual sandpipers is just by being familiar with your common ones and noticing something that's not quite like that.
Absolutely. And that bird does have kind of longish legs too, which is kind of interesting.
The way it's moving. Yeah, because least sandpipers, we've talked about that in this spot. Least sandpipers have a very distinctive way of kind of moving over a mud flat. They're very hunched. They kind of sit very tight, close to the ground, as opposed to some of the larger calidris and
almost mouse-like, methodically moving.
Exactly, and this guy's got like this one's standing really tall, and it's got pale legs, which is weird. I don't know. Weird bird, cool bird. Or it appears to have pale legs.
Yeah,
so I understand why she thought what she thought.
Okay, what's happening on Twitter or YouTube?
Nothing. Though Bob Kachurik in Florida notes in the comments that he saw an anhinga for the first time a few years ago in a tree, and it was a very strange sight, sort of an ungainly bird. It's kind of an extremely ungainly bird. Ungainly is what is the most ungainly bird in North America, do you think, Greg? So I think anhinga is probably on the short list there.
Anhinga is on the short list.
Ungainly, awkward, clumsy, obviously synonyms for ungainly.
Yeah, I'm having
black skimmer. Black skimmer sitting on the ground is sort of
black skimmer laying on the sand is definitely pretty strange.
Yeah. Wood stork, David Blizzard says, yeah, wood storks just kind of move like they're made of, what are those toys that kids used to play with? The metal toys that you stick together, not Legos or anything, but the
I know, Tinker Toys.
Tinker Toys, yeah. Wood stork moves like it's made of Tinker Toys.
Yeah. Ronan suggests a loon on the land. Yeah, well, that's loons and grebes. Of course, ungainly muscovy, and of course Steve Huggins isn't here. That's his favorite species. Yeah, hey, Tricia Lombardi points out they aren't clumsy in their element, which is very true. There was, if you watch the reef cam, I think it's in Florida, in Biscayne Bay. There is a reef cam that picks up wonderful fish, and just it's really fun to watch. But last week it picked up an anhinga swimming through the reef, and it's really amazing just to watch them underwater, because they are very different in the water than they are when they're perched.
For sure. Yeah, there's a lot of birds like that. Birds that are particularly good in the water or in the air. Obviously, any of the swifts look like they
Yeah,
could
or
really
or
move.
alcids like
Nighthawk.
puffins.
Yeah.
They very silly little walks and can
Erector
barely
set.
get
That's
around.
what I was thinking of. Thank you, Heidi. Erector set. That's what a wood stork looks like it's made of.
Tinker toy erector set. One's wood, one's
Tinker
steel.
toys are the wooden things, right? Tinker
Yeah, an
toys are
erector
wooden?
set is steel,
Oh, I'm
but
thinking
it's
of
the
Lincoln
same thing.
Logs. Yeah. Lincoln Log, not Lincoln Logs. Erector set. Thank you. Wild turkeys are kind of weird looking. That's true.
They are weird. They are weird looking.
Just taking a strange turn. Anyway,
All right.
we're up to 2 o'clock.
Oh,
So we'll
yeah, here we
probably
are. Here we
say,
are. Yeah,
good afternoon.
we gotta say goodbye here. But before you
If
do,
you enjoy these sorts of free live stream programs, please consider supporting them through membership in the American Birding Association. You don't just get, the good feeling of knowing that you're helping us do these sorts of things and a lot of the other free resources that the ABA provides, but you get our wonderful magazines. You get discounts to partners like Beauty of Books. You get opportunities to travel with us. We do some really cool stuff. We're going to West Virginia in the early June. I'm probably going to be at that one.
that's going to be fun. I mean, we have our summer bird camps for kids are justifiably are famous. They're well known.
Yeah, good
But
stuff.
we're doing a May camp for adults in West
It's in June,
Virginia.
early
Warbler,
June, actually.
is it June? Okay.
Yeah, right after
it's,
Memorial Day weekend.
Yeah. Okay. It's Warbler camp for adults at New River Gorge in West Virginia. That's
Yeah, it's really
gonna
cool.
be
I
a
was
lot of
there
fun.
in the one before the pandemic, and we got really great looks at things like cerulean warbler, golden winged warbler, Swainson's warbler, some of the really desirable warblers of the southeast and Appalachia. It's really really neat stuff. And obviously lots of other things coming up down the pike as well. You can check those out at aba.org/travel. And just go to
Yeah.
aba.org and peruse around the website. We've got a lot of really cool resources there. Articles from
And
Ted
some-
Floyd and Frank Izagiri. Lots of stuff going on at that over there.
And some fun new projects that are on the near horizon that are member only things that are coming your way. So if you are an ABA
We'll
member,
probably let you know. about
watch
those.
this space, and if you're not, this
Watch
is a
this
good time
space.
to join.
Absolutely. So, aba.org/join. We have lots of different membership levels. Anyway, we'll say goodbye to
Yep.
everyone who joined us today. Thank you all for being here. We really appreciate it. Thanks for the great comments and great questions and all that stuff. And I'll see you around, Greg. I guess I'll see you on Slack.
Yep.
But everybody have a great weekend, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Yep.
Bye.